podcast. My name's Andy Taylor, and that's Isaac Alcorn, and we're here to bring you our thoughts on the Week 7 that's just gone and the Week 8 that's about to come up right behind us. Unfortunately, no Stuart Andrew with us today. He's under the weather, so we decided to crack on without him, which is kind of what happens. Time doesn't stand for you, does it? So we're going on, but our well wishes are with Stuart for sure. Hope he gets better. He's had a hefty week out there in Worcester, hasn't he, with work and fairs and all that sort of stuff, which he did warn us. But Isaac, I believe you got out and about, didn't you? And we'll obviously go into the matches, but you managed to catch some football this weekend.
Yeah, I did. I went to my first match of the season this year. I went to Leeds Beckett against Nottingham Gold.
Nice.
My brother were playing for the Gold. It was good to see a lot of the green players get some minutes in the Prem. I think it was a game that perhaps Gold could afford to do that. Well, obviously we'll go into it in more detail in a bit, but yeah, no, it were a great reason why Nottingham was still top of the Prem.
Awesome. Well, we'll jump straight into it for sure, because why waste any time, and let's get on to what happened in Week 7. And so if we bring up the graphic for what happened in the Premier tier this week, if you're listening, please check us out on our YouTube channel, because we do provide you with some visuals to help with it all. But let's take some time to have a look at the National League. I think you said in your preview, but we also kind of wondered whether there would be some blowouts this week in the Premier tier, and we kind of saw that across most divisions, albeit we'll get into the South in a little while. So probably few surprises for the game that you saw there at Leeds. So take us through what you saw and what your takeaways were from that game.
Yeah, I think it was just Nottingham do the fundamentals really well, whereas Leeds Beckett really don't anymore. And in the past few years, it was a program that was built on fundamentals, hard running, just no matter what, we're just going to run it down your throat and you won't be able to stop us. And I think they've kind of lost that identity over the last couple of years. And you saw that the scoreline that, back 4 or 5 years ago, it'd never be 71-0 to Nottingham Gold. I know, speaking to the players, a lot of the greens travelled. I think the QB got in for the green QB got in for a while. The offensive line for the green team got in a lot. I think it was just a real rest for the Nottingham Gold players, who will be looking more towards the Durhams and the UWE games later on down the season as the ones that we're highlighting to use them players in.
Yeah, and it obviously ended up being quite a one-sided affair as well. And when you see that sort of opportunity that Gold and Green, they have the luxury of doing, then it makes sense that you do that if you do see the game. And I suppose it's a bit sad, really, that they're actually able to do that in this situation, isn't it? And none of us want to see this happen to Leeds Beckett, but we're kind of seeing it, aren't we? Take place on the field, and they've now, what are they? They're now conceding 70 points a game. But, to take, I suppose, to try and put a bit of a positive spin, because that's kind of what I do. I try and find the positive. They are turning up, aren't they? Lesser teams wouldn't have bothered, I suppose, and they're bothering themselves, aren't they? So, it seems like they're still turning up to play this game of American football, right?
Yeah, exactly that. You got a lot of players playing both sides of the ball. Like we said before, they had a lot of injuries. I think that's just one thing that's hurt them all season, really, is because they haven't got the numbers of what they've had of previous years. You have a lot of players who are having to play offense and defense and special teams constantly. And although lower down the tiers, especially in tier 2, that might be, that just might be normal for a lot of teams. In the Prem, it's a luxury where you have your set offense and your set defense, and maybe you have a couple of players who can play both, but nothing to the level that Leeds Beckett are having to do this year. Like in the away game against Nottingham Gold, the starting middle linebacker was middle linebacker and quarterback at the same time.
Right.
So, you had the guard playing D tackle. I think for Leeds Beckett, the players have had the heart in them, and I think sometimes, when they host Loughborough, that's going to be a great game to watch, because looking at the next score down, Loughborough aren't doing too well at the minute either, being blown out by UWE.
Yeah, and take us through your thoughts on there, because I think we saw we saw obviously some blowouts early in the year when it come to UE taking on some of the other teams. They've now beaten Durham 54-14. They put obviously that record score against Leeds Beckett as well. But probably earlier on in the season we may not have predicted such a blowout unless you correct me otherwise, because I know in years gone past UE have done this to people before, haven't they?
Yeah, it's just what UE do. Sporting some really nice new red jerseys, I must admit. They look really good in some of the photos that we've seen. But no, I think it's a case with UE of they know that they need to score as many points as Nottingham are going to. You know, towards the end of the season, with Nottingham winning, beating them in the first week of the national season, you know, you hope that they hope that they can go to Nottingham and do what Notts did to them. And I think if they can just keep outscoring Nottingham week by week, eventually it'll all work itself out, and if this keeps going the way they will, they'll probably finish top if they beat Nottingham when they face each other
on the last week of the season. Can't wait for that. But I mean, I suppose what goes under the radar in a lot of this, and we got a couple of comments over social media around who should be above who, and actually, if you take away head to head, the next tiebreaker is average points conceded, and so these two teams are going to really want to. Bearing in mind that, as you say, that it's 1-0 to Nottingham Gold at the moment. There's only 1 point in it. So aggregate scores is currently only separated by 1 point when they obviously travel to Nottingham. Interestingly, they're both tied on 43 points. But UE have only scored only played 4 games, and Gold have conceded 5. Have played 5. So there's a difference in their average there. Now UE now host Durham, who've got to make that massive trip, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But it's interesting how these two teams still are seemingly only separated by 1 point all this way into the season. So it's shaping up nicely, isn't it? In this Premier National.
It's built. That's why the Prem National was built. Is to have the best teams play against the best teams and have direct competition each week. You know, you saw it the last couple of seasons with UE just scoring at will against the Prem South, the old Prem South. Whereas now they're having to play teams that, like Notts, well, they'll play them twice a year guaranteed, rather than just a one-off in a final. And this closeness is exactly why the Prem was built. Yeah,
love it. And then let's talk about the next tier, if you like, of the Prem. So North and South. Saw some one-sided affairs in the north, didn't we? Must admit, I don't know the history of Newcastle all that much, but I was surprised by the 35-0 at home. But maybe you could shed a bit more light on there. But what we've got is obviously the Warwick Wolves travelled up to Newcastle and they beat them 35-0. And then Leeds travelled to Liverpool or Skelmersdale and beat Liverpool 40-13. Interestingly, that now sees Trent drop to third, because obviously they've had a week off. We've got Leeds now sitting at the top of the Prem North, waiting to see what happens with Trent. So, interesting.
Yeah, I think Warwick is kind of a surprise package. I think at the start of the year, I remember writing that I thought they were one of the ones who could perhaps be in the relegation scrap, but they've come out and proved, I think, a lot of people wrong. They saw the gritty performance earlier in the season. I think it was against NTU, where they're beating.
That's right. They're the only ones who have beaten them at the moment. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think beating teams like that, they had a shaky start first week against Leeds, but after that, it's just been win after win after win. I think I feel bad for Newcastle. Really, they've got a new offensive coordinator this year, so maybe stuff isn't clicking quite right for them just yet. They were the team who should have been relegated from the old Prem North last season. Obviously, the 4 teams from the Prem North went straight into the National, so they stayed in the Prem North. So, maybe a season where, I don't think they will go down, because you've got Liverpool there as well, who currently are winless as well. But Liverpool scoring 13 points gives them a little bit of hope. It's the most points they've scored all season against a strong Leeds side that, maybe aren't the best on the road, as we've seen when they've played Trent. But, it's still a strong Leeds side who are sitting top comfortably at the minute.
Yeah, that division's interesting as well, isn't it? It's starting to shape out in between three at the top, as you say. We've got Warwick, who have beaten NTU, and NTU who've beaten Leeds. Leeds and Warwick played. They have,
Leeds
and Leeds beat Warwick. So between the three of them, they can't decide who's winning and who's losing. Yep. And then Newcastle and Liverpool are only separated by 8 points. And Newcastle have got to travel to Liverpool later in the year. So can't really count your chickens there in that division either. Which can't wait to see.
It's bringing everyone closer together, and hopefully the competition just keeps going on for the rest of the year.
Yeah, totally. And I'm looking ahead to week 11 with the Liverpool Newcastle game. And then you've got Leeds, Nottingham, Trent finishing out the year. So there'll be an exciting few weeks in the Prem North. Then in the Prem South, it's kind of taking shape now, isn't it? Certainly after this week, you kind of can see the way it's working out. We saw Exeter travel to Cardiff and come away with that team is clearly getting better, starting off with loss after loss and then getting that really close win against Birmingham. And now we've got this win over Cardiff, 32-22, and Portsmouth travelled to Birmingham and came out 38-14 winners.
Yeah, I think it shows that Birmingham and Cardiff can only really beat each other. Against going up against other teams, they struggle a lot. I think that'll go down to the points aggregate again, because you look at the games they've gotten. Do you see Cardiff beating an SGS or a Portsmouth? The same for Birmingham. Do you see you look at like Exeter, for example. They started off the season slow. However, when it matters and they win the games they need to win, against teams who are at the bottom of the division too, all of a sudden they're playing really, really well. And it's like with Portsmouth, they're just keeping SGS just in enough reach where they're not running away with the league yet. Obviously, stuff can change this weekend, but I think the South is we're finally getting to see the real shape of the South. Whereas in the last few weeks, it's been hard to see what it was pretty much like it was SGS, Portsmouth, and then the rest at the bottom. They were all a mix. Whereas now you've got Exeter and Portsmouth are going to be fighting out for that number 2 spot come toward the end of the season, and it's going to be between Birmingham and Cardiff to see who's up for the for the drop.
Well, Cardiff have got 3 games left, haven't they? And by my count, 3 games left, 2 of them against the top of the division. They've got to be preparing for that travel to Exeter, haven't they? Because that's their only chance of survival, unless they can sneak a victory out of SGS or Portsmouth. Stranger things have happened in American football, let alone BUCS American football. But with that head-to-head against not having that head-to-head against Birmingham, they're going to have to try and pull something out of the bag with Exeter, and that's a 10-point swing. So there's going to have to be some miracles work there by the looks of it, although we don't get to watch these games as much as we would like.
Yeah.
So interesting. And then Portsmouth, Portsmouth, their only blip this year has been against SGS, hasn't it? And even then, that was only a 2-score, 15 points difference between the two. So closest score yet for SGS, and it'll be interesting to see what SGS do when they have to travel to Portsmouth later in the year. So can't count that out yet, although it looked like we could do this time last week, but Portsmouth are keeping pace. No, awesome. Let's take a look at Tier 1 then. What stood out to you in the results of Tier 1? We didn't have Aberdeen and Edinburgh Napier. We've since learned that that's been given to Edinburgh Napier as an away walkover. We also had the home walkover with Northumbria Manchester. But out of the others, what stood out to you?
It's the Manchester Met LGMU game that Stuart picked last week as his game of the week. And on paper, it looks an entertaining one. 22-13 in favour of Manchester Met. That keeps them right in the middle of the table. If UCLan hit a poor run of form, if Northumbria hit a poor run of form, even though that's unlikely, Manchester Met are in there now. 2 wins, 3 losses, and they've all come against either Northumbria or UCLan. Or Manchester, apologies. But no, that game seems like the most interesting one out of the lot. And also Leicester against Hull. A Hull side that has struggled all season. Then all of a sudden against, a team who, could be fighting for second spot along with Coventry, and they go on the tie 2020. It's I don't know about Hull. It seems like a weird one. You don't know what they're going to do from one week to next, because they scored 14 points in the first game, then 3 against, albeit a great Green side, and then they go to Leicester knowing they need something, and they get something.
Came away with a point, they. And it's interesting that you're one of your favourite divisions, as you've described multiple times now, isn't it? So we've now got a flip between Man Met and Manchester, because Manchester have seemingly been docked those 2 points. So it makes a fixture coming up this week even more tastier if LJMU can make some progress with their offense, but we'll get onto that in a little while. I was interested. I think I mentioned this, the Hertfordshire Oxford game going into this week. We saw, certainly as it played out at the beginning of the season, we had a blowout win for Brunel, we had a blowout win for Hertfordshire, we had a blowout win for Oxford. We wondered, which one of those was the true good team of the division, and then Brunel went on to beat Oxford and Hertfordshire, and then this was the best of the rest, seemingly. And we've got nearly 60 points scored in one game, which seemingly shows form to what Oxford and Hertfordshire can do with scoring points and on the field when it mattered.
Yeah, and just look at the division; it's so close with each other. You see, Oxford and Brighton just on 1 win each. Hertfordshire now 2-1, and then Brunel, who are just running away with it basically now. You saw at the start of the season, Oxford, Hertfordshire, Oxford, Hertfordshire and Brunel all played Reading, and it was like a thing of, is it just because they're playing Reading, or are they actually this good? And I think now, after this week, we've learned that maybe it is just Reading, unfortunately. With Hertfordshire doing what they did against Oxford, and also Brunel, it was a close victory. However, sometimes them ones can be quite a tricky one to get sometimes, because when you've been running away with some results like they have done against like Oxford, when they've put 55 points on them, a game like that can flip the mentality of thinking, oh yeah, we're just going to go out, we're going to score 50 again, everything's going to be great. But yet they struggled to score, and it showed that the defense didn't really let that many points up, which is a good thing going, later on into the season.
And the travel to Brighton was always going to be a tricky game, wasn't it, for them? Trying to get a group of guys down to Brighton to play a game of American football on a Sunday can't be the easiest thing in the world to do. So I think they'll come away really happy to come away with that victory. Probably might give them a wake-up call as well. It might actually be a really good victory in more ways than one for them. And Brighton, we're watching to see what you can do in the weeks to come, because you're clearly a tricky team to come across when you do face them. Although they obviously got taken down by Hertfordshire early in the year, but to do that to Brunel, they've done all right there, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. I think that'll do a lot of good for Brighton as well. I think, we can take it to a top team. So, I think it's a good result for both sides, even though Brighton, didn't come away with a result.
Yeah, and look at that Bournemouth one as well. Very similar sort of thoughts there, really. Yeah, to grit out to that 15, because I think it ended up, wasn't it 15-0 at one point, and then I think I saw on their stories that it was 15-0, and then Bath brought out the last 8 points. That's one of those where you come away and you go, whew, got away with that. But we'll take the positives from that as well, I'm sure, knowing that they've been able to travel down or travel up and come away with something.
I mean, it'd be a good thing for Bath as well. They've scored more than 2 points in a game for the first time this year.
Yeah, that's very true.
So in 2 games with just 2 points, and now and one of them was a win somehow. But scoring 8 points at the top of the table, it's going to give them confidence going in later into the year when they face Swansea again, and they'll have to do the same.
They tripled their point score in one game for the season from 4 to 12. But the way it's playing out at the moment, Bournemouth look like they're almost a lock. I haven't gamed it out in my head, but there's 6 points difference between them and Bristol. They've already beaten Bristol, as far as I can tell, handily. So they're probably already a lock in the playoffs, in the postseason
with 3 games left to go.
So, three games left.
4.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. So
if Bristol win out,
they would have to beat Bournemouth and they'd have to overcome the 52 points, wouldn't they? So, we can kind of pencil them in, although we do maths here inside Britball. We take it literally. Awesome. Great stuff. Let's have a look at Tier 2 then. Let's see how we got on there, because, again, we had another game postponed there. We had Gloucestershire versus UE postponed. We have got a new date for that, actually. I noted earlier on before we came online. That is next week. So instead of last week, that is next week. We are doing a week 8.5 or 8.2, whatever you want to call it, because it's not week 9. So we've got that coming on next week instead, which is great to see that they've been able to do that. But plenty of fascinating results there over the Tier 2. Take us through what stood out.
I don't know what's happened to Staffordshire. They had 2 great wins against Edge Hill and Kiel, then played Lancaster, lost, had a week break, come back, playing Edge Hill side they've already beaten, and go and concede 35 points. I know they've got
gave up the head-to-head.
The head-to-head that they had is now nothing. So when and Edge Hill are now top of that division, which is wild to think of, really. When they've got a young head coach, it's not a side that you'd have thought, oh yeah, Edge Hill, they're gonna be top at one point. Now your Lancasters had been a bit of favourites there, but no, I don't know what's happened to Staffordshire. Like we said a few weeks ago, they have the experienced QB who spent time with the Merseyside Nighthawks.
Yeah, with the Nighthawks, yeah. No, well, yeah.
So you'd have thought with that, especially in Tier 2, that they would have been, flying. But fair play to Edge Hill, going, taking the game to them after, because they could have easily lost like they did last time, to be fair. And then we look at the East, the North East, the Sheffield. I think they're one of the teams we could maybe pencil in the playoffs as well. Not mathematically, just because they're that good. I don't see where they really lose a game. Sunderland, quite a surprise package. I know they've played York St John twice, but still coming away with 2 wins and another close game this week against York St John. It shows like there's something about this Sunderland team, and obviously when we speak about what's happening this weekend, it'll be a real test for them. So it's going to be an interesting one this week.
I agree with you. I mean, we don't really know what Kiel are. We've only seen them twice. I think you made some sort of prediction that they may be the team that struggles in this division. We don't know. We've only seen them twice. They've only scored 7 points in those 2 games, but interestingly, none of them have been Edge Hill. So Edge Hill find themselves at the top of that division without playing Kiel, making a total presumption that Kiel are the bottom team in that division, but we just don't know yet, do we?
Yeah, we don't know until them 2 play each other.
Exactly.
That could be a great game for Edge Hill. Could be a real turning point for them.
Yeah, 100%. And then, as you say, Sunderland absolutely deserve their plaudits. But what stood out to me was how that's flipped from a 52-14 win, or should I put it on the YSJ side, loss, and then they've come back the week later and turned it around, and it's been a 4-point game. So credit's due to YSJ for turning that around, although we don't know whether it's because Sunderland took their foot off the gas or not. But it's interesting to see that was much closer than it was the week before. Yeah,
it's great to see how the team can just improve in a week. Maybe with the conditions. I know that your YSJ play on a grass pitch. Sunderland play up at Druid Park. Obviously, that's AstroTurf, so it could have just been that. But Sunderland, they're looking quite good at the minute. And another gritty win there shows why they're the number 2 right now.
Yeah, we got Cambridge keeping up with the rest of the pack in Lincoln and Derby there in the Midlands, and then having a look at the Southeast, because that was the only division in action this week. We've now got a little bit of a clearer picture there in the Southeast. Greenwich has obviously come away with a win against Canterbury. Canterbury sit down at the bottom of the division there alongside Imperial, but it looks like we've got Quimble, Queen Mary, and Kingston being at the top of the division there, and I think we see some of them this week as well, don't we? So it'll be interesting. No, we don't see any of the top of the division this week, but no, we're getting a clearer picture, albeit still very muddy. So we'll have to take more data points to understand what actually is going to happen there. But City St George, they came away with a loss against Queen's Mary, and then that's put that sort of gap between them. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in weeks gone by. So yeah, no, we're starting to get a picture. We've started talking about in the background around, what does the playoff picture look like? A good time to kind of do that as we go into the Christmas break for sure. So we'll have a little look at that. Maybe that's something we can do next week, is have a little look at, if the season ended today, what would it look like? So watch this space. We'll bring you that next week for sure. So you ready to have a little look at next week? This week, I suppose. We're crashing in quickly. We've got Friday night games, we've got Saturday night games, I think we've got Sunday games, but as always, so my brain can keep up, let's have a look at tier by tier. In the National League, we've got UE Bullets versus Durham, we've got Gold versus Loughborough, and both are Saturday according to graphic that Stuart has provided us. So hopefully that's right. And then we've got NTU Newcastle, Raptors, Liverpool, Warwick Wolves, SGS Cardiff, Exeter, Portsmouth. So some interesting games there in the Premier tier for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Durham making that God knows how many hour journey down to Bristol. UW had to do it at the start towards the start of the season, and they came away with a win. Maybe Durham could do the same, help out their fellow Prem North side in the Nottingham Gold. But no, Loughborough will look to go to Nottingham on Saturday and hopefully, beat them. It's as simple as that. I think if Loughborough want to try and avoid any sort of drama with Leeds Beckett, they're going to have to try and, either score some points or stop Nottingham from scoring points. But no, I think there we could maybe predict 2 potential blowouts,
right,
in favour of the usuals, bullets and gold.
And we've seen them this year, haven't we? These fixtures already. So I'm trying to. Yeah, so we saw a 54-14 UE travelled up to Durham, probably bigger than we might have expected, but they've now got to travel, so that's going to be tricky, isn't it? And then Gold Loughborough, that happened already?
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago.
7.
Yeah. So you might be right there, mightn't you?
It's also.
You got any favourites? Got any favourites here for the Prem tier?
I like the
tricky, isn't it?
Exeter Portsmouth is going to be the one that defines 2 seasons. Really, if Portsmouth can beat Exeter, they can easily catch SGS, and it puts them in that second spot firmly. Whereas if Exeter win, it muds up the division a little bit in for second spot. I think Exeter could have it in them, but no, they'll have to take away what they've had from their last 2 games and just hope it'll work again against a strong Portsmouth side.
Yeah, Portsmouth travelling again, so hopefully it doesn't take too much out of them. It'll be interesting to see if Exeter can pull one out the bag there against Portsmouth and really murky up that second place then that we know is probably going to head into the playoffs this year, right? So interesting to see. I think you covered what I was thinking going into this. We've got some potential blowouts across both the league and the North, potentially, depending on if we've got that improvement in, the Raptors' offense have shown some life.
Yeah.
The Newcastle Raiders have got to travel after a difficult week this week. So, fingers crossed it's not too difficult for those teams as well.
It's a lot of travel across the entire Prem division, really. I think it's something we bring up every week, but it is a massive factor, especially when you're travelling from Newcastle all the way to Nottingham. I remember the Greens doing it to go play Northumbria last year. I think it took them like 6.5 hours, 7 hours.
Wow!
You're having to do that. You're having to do that on a Sunday morning, then go play American football. Thinking about it just makes me, want to stay at home.
Totally. Like I'm looking out my window thinking, no thanks. But no, that's just me. That I can say that as an old man. But as you say, Newcastle, but a 1:30 kickoff as well. Probably aim to get there for 11:30. That's going to be good luck with your alarms, lads. So quickly moving on to Tier 1.
They're not going out on Saturday night.
Well, you hope not. That's what the head coach is hoping for anyway. Wow, games galore across Tier 1 for sure, across both North and South parts.
The game of all time is back.
The game of all time is back, and it's the flip. So let's build that up then, shall we? So
we'll leave that to last.
We'll leave that to last. That's absolutely fine. What else stands out to you other than the game of all time part 2? What else stands out to you across Tier 1?
Nottingham Green against Coventry, the team that's quietly going unbeaten against the Coventry Jets side that I think have surprised a lot of people. They've been 2-2 at the minute. They got taken over last week by Leicester with their draw, but they've got a game in hand over Leicester. But I don't see Nottingham really losing a game at the minute. I think it's just a strong team, and they've not even reached their full potential yet. So I think the Nottingham Green against Coventry, which is on Sunday, even though the Gold game's on Saturday, which is strange. But no, I can't see Green really losing a game yet.
Did you note any injuries at all while they were some of them were playing for gold?
No, I think they all look, the ones who were greens. The ones who were greens look really strong. They look like they belonged in the Prem. I mean, they were playing. The caveat to that is they were playing Leeds Beckett, who we don't know where they are at the minute, but they look really strong. The offensive line that came in and helped looked like they'd stand up against any defensive line really. They swapped at half time, and that's when they just put the foot down and just went for it. They had I think it was 3 touchdowns back to back chalked off because of penalties. So the potential is there for the Greens to definitely fight for a spot in the gold, and I think Coventry. It'd be good if they could prove a fight, but I don't think it'll be enough of a fight to beat the Green at home, really. In the South,
I'm trying to see if Kent UCL have played. I don't think they have they? So Kent UCL haven't played yet. UCL have obviously got that walkover loss, so taking the 2 away from them. So sneakily, they're sat there in fourth position, but they have beaten Essex handily 22-12 in the first week, and then they faced them again down the line and beat them 30-0. But then they did lose to King's College. So it's interesting to see that game, the Kent UCL one, how that might turn out. My eyes fall immediately on the Bristol Swansea game because that was the 2-0 win to Bristol. If you remember last time out, wasn't it? Or was that Bath? Wow, that was Bath.
It was 14-0 Swansea that played. Oh no, what was the Bristol one?
Have they played? No, they mustn't have played yet.
No, they haven't played yet.
No, they haven't. Right, okay. No, well, ignore me then. But that's a Friday Night Lights. That's interesting. Yeah. But no, never mind. I thought that was the 2-0 one.
No, that was Bath.
That was Bath, yeah.
I remember that one because it was Bath's only, the only points they scored were 2 points in 2 games.
Yeah.
Back to back.
Brighton will want to close that gap in on Hertfordshire. They showed life against Brunel. They've showed that they're difficult. Obviously, they had that 43-0 loss away to Hertfordshire. But I think Brunel have shown that it's not easy to travel to Brighton. And Brighton are hosting their second home game. What's that? 3 on the bounce because they got Reading next week as well. So interesting to see what comes out of the south. Whether Hearts find it as difficult as Brunel did going down that way. But yeah, I'm trying to move away from talking about Reading and Essex because they're the ones that are obviously struggling in their respective divisions, aren't they? And they're facing the top of their division for both games.
Yeah. Essex could trip King's College London up though. If Essex can pull out a result there from some miracle, if Kent beat UCL and Essex beat King's College London, that division's just blown wide open.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a King College win, they're still top. Kent will be chasing them, but you'll have to wait till their rematch to really have a. The played yet? Yeah, they have. You'll have to wait till their rematch between Kent and King's College to have anything. So Essex could really do Kent a favour and trip them up this week.
Yeah, it is that murky division, isn't it? And hopefully we seem to be saying this every week, but hopefully a couple of extra data points will get a clearer picture. But the fixtures aren't quite helping us to try and get that really. But yeah, if we can get KCL, get those data points out in there for sure, we'll be able to get an idea of what's happening. But no, I do worry for what might happen with Reading and Essex this week, for sure. Yeah. And then let's see what happens out of the Bath and Southampton game and see where we get. But yeah, let's talk about that UCLan Northumbria game. So you build it as the best game ever, game of ever in your preview. Because to be fair, we had two high flying teams at the time, could hardly concede, could not stop scoring, and for UCLan, the job is simple, isn't it? Two touchdown win, you pretty much secure the top spot. Northumbria, a win would be lovely, a tie would be fine, but keep it close if you're going to have to travel down to UCLan, and you do come away with a loss. Let's keep it tight. Seems to be the script this week, right? Yeah,
pretty much. This is realistically, if Northumbria win, I think they're like other teams we've spoken about. You can pencil them in to win the division, because there isn't another team who can beat them realistically. I think
you might be right. You might be right. It might be winning in.
I think.
Because they would be 6 points ahead of Man Met.
Who's only got 3 games and one of them's against Northumbria.
Exactly. And they've already beaten Man Met, have they? Have they played them? Yeah, they've already beaten them.
Yeah. So for Northumbria, whose next game after this is in January, but it's against LJMU. So if they win this and can just put all your effort into this one game.
And host season, LJMU.
And host LJMU, who, are not
struggling.
Good. Yeah, struggling. That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Better than me. But no, it's Northumbria, to say it's their first season back in Tier 1 after being in old Division 1, Division 2 last season. That's great for them as a programme. It will be interesting, though, in a couple of years when their QB leaves. Because he's got this season and next season, and then unless he does a Masters, then he's going back to the States.
Then a PhD, and then
yeah, exactly. Yeah, just take him up every weekend. Just
40-year-old QB, yeah,
exactly. But I think having a program like that in Northumbria, it'll just help them. You see in the Northeast in adult and youth as well. There's a strong set of teams there. And if Northumbria can just add the name into it, it's going to be a hotspot for a lot of young athletes in that region. I think could travel up to it. And I think a win against UConn this week, it pretty much guarantees that they're in the playoffs and they're one of the favourites for the entire thing out of really, if they can beat UConn twice in one season.
100%. I don't think we could put the gold P on there just yet. I think mathematically we would have to wait for that LJMU game, but you could almost pretty much put it on. My
slightly faded one.
Yeah, a shaded P. Yeah, 100%.
Just like an outline of one.
Yeah, but hey, you can guarantee UClan are there to support the party, aren't they? And they're going to have something to say about it for sure, because they have shown that the only time that they've conceded really is against Northumbria. It was a close game. Yeah, okay. Two touchdown difference is not ideal for them, but they had to travel. Now they get to host them and put on a show. And so, yeah, I think you're right in probably billing it similar as the game of the year, point two.
Yeah, pretty well. And the UClan team, like we said earlier in the season, they've got a great coaching staff with the GB quarterback as the head coach.
Yeah,
and on top of that, they've got such a close knit team who have all played together through youth, and now taking it really to BUCS. And a loss, if it's a close loss, could do them a lot of good going into the later parts of the season. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens, and hopefully next week we'll be speaking about what looks to be a really great game.
Yeah, and as you say, knowing a lot of those coaching staff through the adult ball, you can guarantee that a win, but anything other than a win won't do. But certainly they'll at least want to see that gap closed at the very least, so they can take that momentum into Met and Manchester that they've got coming up over the next few game days. Anyway, it's not the next few weeks, because that game that I've just randomly referred to is in February, which feels like it's miles away. So yeah, right. That you've built that beautifully. I look forward to reading about that in your preview for sure. But let's talk about Tier 2 before we get out of here. We've put on there on the graphics that we're not entirely sure what the kickoff time for Sunderland are. So if you are listening, Sunderland or York, give us a shout so we can let everybody know when you kick off. I think they were 1:30 the last couple of games, weren't they? So expect something similar. But across Tier 2, you have to move further south for these games if you ignore the Sunderland-York game. And you've touched on that, haven't you? But we've got another great slate of games coming up in Tier 2 this week as well.
Yeah, so I'll focus on the north first. Derby Lincoln, top two in the Midlands. That's going to be a great game to watch. Well, not to watch, but to read about afterwards. Derby winning last time. Could Lincoln perhaps cause a bit of an upset? Away from home. Derby last year, who did really, really well all season, didn't get promotion like they probably should have deserved to. But, Lincoln, I think, could spoil the party, and Lincoln need to, if they want to finish top seed, and also build that gap to Cambridge, who are just waiting. They're just there waiting for them to basically slip up and just take that spot straight away. So it's a big week for Lincoln. And again, Derby, you could pretty much pencil their name in the playoffs if they win as well. So I don't see them losing to a Cambridge really, or a AIU. But yeah, in the south, Surrey, Oxford, Brooks. Second versus third in the southern.
This is where we see the top three face each other now, isn't it? You know, they've all had their go against Royal Holloway, Solent, and I think you mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. It's when they started facing each other we would be interested. Yeah,
and this looks like an interesting one. You've got a team who's scored 103 and not conceded one in Oxford Brooks against a side in Surrey who equally have done as good on defence, only conceding 6 points, and not scoring as scored 65 points so far. But still, I think it's going to be a great game on defence. Really, it could be just a defensive masterclass from both sides. And now I've said that, it'll probably be like 50-50, and it'll be like like
clip it,
passing yards. Yeah, clip it. But no, this division now is where we get to see a little bit more of what have these top three teams really got. It's all right when you're playing a side like Chichester, who's conceded 100 odd points already in 2 games. Mm-hmm. But what's it like when you have to play a side who has beaten a side as many points like that? So no, that's going to be an interesting one. And
one
who else
side
did we
there's
go
going to
out?
separate themselves, isn't it? Because we've got Surrey, who are obviously now 3-0, and then we'll
Yeah.
find out where the gap is between those top three and who might be pushing for playoffs. And then, I'm sure you're going on to, we've got the Southeast, where we've finally got the bottom two facing each other as well, haven't we? And Greenwich are going in with a win into this game against Imperial.
Yeah, and they can jump up to third, really. If City St George, who are weirdly third at the minute with 2 draws, but only 1 draw that played out fully, and a walkover win, and a lot.
It's really weird to write a record as 1, and 2.
But it'd be even more if you just put in like brackets. You like the 1 win is a walkover, 1 draw is like a one they had to call early because of an injury, and it's just it's strange. It's just the City St George look at the minute. But no, if Greenwich can find a victory against Imperial, it's Greenwich can easily just jump up to third and take that spot off City St George. But I don't think Imperial are going to make it easy for them at all. I think Imperial know they don't want to be winless until they eventually face Canterbury. But if they can get a decent win against Greenwich this week, it only just builds confidence for them, and it puts them on the same record as Greenwich as well. So it's going to be an interesting one there for sure.
Every point's going to count in that division, it feels like, doesn't it? It seems like the only team that is clear is Kingston. The rest they're almost like scrapping for points, aren't they? So we haven't seen Kingston now in a couple of weeks, if memory serves. We last saw them in week 5 against Imperial, actually, which was their last game as well. So it feels like every point will help in that division.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to talk about the Southwest because they've got that team I can't say. But but no, I think it's the same as it looks like the Southern. If you look at it, it's 3 sides who are winless, 3 sides who have a win. Worcester, obviously, the outliers with a loss as well. They're 1-1. But that Welsh side haven't played since week 2.
Yeah,
that a lot of rest.
Stop-start. Yeah,
that is just a stop.
So what did they have? They had the 14-3 win, didn't they? Early in week 2.
Then they were supposed to play UE Blitz 2, and I believe
in week 3, wasn't it? Right,
and it was cancelled due to if you believe what they put out in their statement, it was kit reasons from UE Blitz, and then
wasn't it Bath Spa at some point?
I know there was another game cancelled. No, Plymouth. Wait, Plymouth? Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
But either way, that's tricky, isn't it? There's rest, and then there's actually I've only played 1 game, and then I've got to get going again 6 weeks later. That's tough.
Yeah, it'd be unsurprising if they haven't had some sort of friendly in this gap.
Right.
It only makes sense if they had some sort of scrimmage again. If there's an adult, I don't know about Wales at all. As you can tell by my incredible pronunciation.
Not close to them either. I mean, like Bangor would have been reasonably close, but they don't exist unless they were training.
Bangor have offered a few development games to a few places,
right.
And I think Salford might have offered them one because the Salford Storm are on
Chester have been looking as well, haven't they? We know Chester.
Exactly. There's a few teams around that area that would happily either host or go to them just to have that experience. Even if they meet halfway at because I remember Bangor who used to play at JMO as well.
Yeah. Fair dues.
So even if it was something like that, but no, it's difficult for Aberystwyth. I'm not even going to find
Aberystwyth. I'll say it for you. What I'll do is I'll get it drop.
Like a button.
And I'll
we one of them things on podcast where you can just press a button and it's just
that's it.
It's like AI saying that place name,
and you just mime.
Yeah, but no, Gloucester. They obviously had that. They've only played 1 game as well.
And it was that tough loss against Worcester as well.
A 5-week break to the first one, then a 3-week break to the next one. It's 2 teams we haven't seen a lot of.
No.
And
it's really backloaded now, hasn't it? All those fixtures
That
in this
entire
division
division
are
is-
now just going to come quick.
That entire division just is, your UE seconds who have only played one, Bath, UE seconds, Gloucester,
Yeah.
and that Welsh place have only played one game so far this season. And
Yeah,
you look
no,
at
it's-
Plymouth City, it's a tough division to call because you don't know what's going to happen. And then after the Christmas break, where every single week has a game, which is unlike any other division.
Fingers crossed we can get a full slate of games in this week with this. Otherwise, we're going to have to start calling games, aren't we? And there's going to have to be nil-nil ties and all that jazz, because they're really going to struggle to start fitting these in. I think that, we've got from this week, we've got 2 games every week, including an extra week next week.
Yeah.
In this division, so
yeah,
it's tricky.
Next, by the actual proper Christmas break, which is obviously not this weekend coming, the weekend after, because we've got 2 games. I think we'll start to see what this Southwestern 2As is all about. So yeah, I think it's one to watch out for, especially see if Worcester can take it to Bath. Bath only played against Plymouth, who are currently top. So we don't know what any of these teams are actually like. There's not enough.
I ain't seen them enough
data points.
Yeah.
There's no data points. It's not like it's a complete opposite from the Southeast, where they've all played at least 2
too many.
They've played too many games already. Too many draws. How is there already? It's already 3 draws in that. Yeah, 2 draws in that. It's just ridiculous. But no,
100%.
It's definitely an interesting one.
Yeah, no doubt, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this week as well. As you say, it gives a nice clearer picture to look to. Kind of, we can go away and we can have a little look at what we've seen and have a bit more of a deep dive into it, and maybe reach out to a couple of teams. It'd be good to hear from the likes of YSJ and Sunderland to find out what was the difference there, and and certainly pick apart what happens up north in Lancashire for sure, to see what happens with Northumbria UClan. But yeah, then next week where we've only got 2 games to preview, so we will be back next week. We'll obviously talk about this week, and then we'll get a little bit of a preview into the 2 games happening, assuming it stays that way, that there's only 2 games next week. Before we break up for Christmas. There is the Women's Flag League this weekend as well. So game day 3 is happening. I know one of them is happening very close to me at JMO in Skelmersdale. So I'm hoping to pop down there to see what's happening in the WFFL. And then there's plenty more up and down the country as well. So I know Kiwi and Aaron are promising, and they will bring you this episode that they have been promising for a couple of weeks. They've just had a difficult time trying to get in front of a mic. Lots going on for them. I know they will apologise profusely when they get in front of a mic, I'm sure, but there will be a bumper episode coming nonetheless. So look forward to being able to provide you our thoughts and review on week 8 of the BUCS League and see where we get at, and then also to provide you the results for WFFL over this weekend as well. So really looking forward to that. But nonetheless, hope everyone stays safe, stays well. Everybody recovers. Those who aren't well and able to join us on a podcast, do it. But otherwise, we'll catch you again next time. And Isaac, thank you very much for your time once again. Catch you next week.